Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart for joining us as a sponsor. Quality Auto Mart was born in 1985. They are owned and operated by Mark and Nancy Repke. Quality Auto Mart provides all the services, repairs, and maintenance for your vehicle's needs with a 3-year auto parts and labor warranty. They offer complimentary vehicle safety inspection and estimates. Also, they offer a shuttle service, and the 4th oil change is always on them. They are located at 7307 on State Road 46 in Batesville, Indiana. Make sure you give them a call at 812-934-2301.
Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson alongside Kyle Crawford, bringing you another great show. This is going to get mean, down and dirty today. Kyle, what's going on, man?
Not much. I'm out of coffee.
You're like 3 cups deep already.
I know. I told you. It could be bad here. I'm going to tell you, boys. I broke the seal, and you all know what that means. It could be bad.
If you go into
mid-show, I might have to exit.
Yeah. Well, also, though, you go into heart fibrillations and stuff like that
true.
you've been known to do before.
I know.
I am not doing CPR on you. I'm just telling you now.
I made a mistake to telling the guys at work that I was having heart fluttering, and they were like, "Oh, really? Wow." So now I get razzed about that daily.
Yeah.
I got to drink half cap now. Anyways, what the heck are we going to do today?
We're going to a dark place. I was going to say deep, dark place. And so today, again, I think, sometimes you guys might wonder where topics come from. And a lot of topics come from what I get to do on a regular basis in the work that I do. And a big part of the work that I do is dealing with people, primarily men, that struggle with porn. And so I wanted to talk about a different approach. I'm not saying it's unique to me or anything like that, but something that I've started to incorporate into my work with men with porn. And I felt like, this should just be, I think, something that we should generally be teaching men, women, but our young boys as well. From the get-go, teaching them a whole different thought process about porn versus what we've actually seen. What we've seen really in our lifetime is a very soft approval of porn. Yeah. And we've done that through advertisements and everything else. And now we are where we are. Yep. Right? Yep. So bottom line is today we're going to talk about how to hate porn. How to hate porn. And you had asked an interesting question. Is it okay to hate, or did Jesus hate? Yeah. What did you come up with on that? Because it was a question in your men's group.
Yeah, in our small group on Tuesday, a few weeks ago, one of the guys, we were just talking and just in discussion, had asked, do you guys think Jesus hated things? Was there something that Jesus hated? Because again, if part of Strong Dads is to try and emulate the life of Jesus and try and be better men, be closer to how Jesus lived, and the question was posed: did Jesus have hate? Did he hate things? And it's a tough question because I think the initial response is, well, no, Jesus doesn't, because I think part of it is how society and how we have kind of depicted this Jesus figure as kind of this nice shepherd boy who loves everyone and is calming, but when you start to actually read scripture, there is a hate. Jesus has a hatred for sin. And you had said it before we hit the record, and it was actually mentioned in our small group, this idea of righteous hate, this idea that there are things that we should hate. We should hate the sin in our life. We should hate the things that we continue to do, i.e. stuff like porn. And this should be something that we learn and we develop a strong hatred for things that are actually holding us away from relationships, holding us back from, growing closer to Christ. Whatever that looks like for you, we should have hatred for that.
Yeah. And I think a distinction might be, too, is Jesus didn't have hate for people.
Yes.
He had hate for the sin.
Yes.
And now I think there's a kind of a scary place there. A lot of times people identify by a certain sin. They, if you, I am, we always talk about different ways that people identify themselves. And if I identify myself as something that could be of sin, and I'm going to stick to, well, that's my identity, that's who I am, then you have put yourself into a place where you have felt hated. And so this is the part where we run into the whole gay, lesbian, the LGBT community. When Christians look at those actions as being sinful, they're not hating on the person, they're hating on the actions. But then when somebody identifies, well, I am not a person anymore, I am gay, now they can't do anything but take it personally. And
good point.
Again, that's their part of how they've identified. And we're not called to identify ourselves by these attributes. We're called to identify ourselves as children of God. I'm made in his image. And all these other things are things that man places on as labels and tags. And we have to be really careful with how we even allow ourselves to be labeled or identified. And so today we are talking about, why it's necessary to hate certain types of sin. And in particular, we're going to wrap most of our conversation around the porn industry. But we could wrap this in a lot of different ways around a lot of different things. All right. So before we go any deeper, let's thank our sponsors and let's get rolling.
Let's do it. Strong Dads, we would love to thank Casey Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Been an awesome sponsor for us, located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, State Line Road. Go check them out. Let them know we sent you up there. Got a lot of home decor and all your landscaping needs. So really do appreciate Casey's Outdoor Solutions.
All right. Also want to thank Quality Automart for coming alongside of Strong Dads. So for all your automotive needs, whether it's fixing up the car, getting the oil changed, muffler work, whatever it is, check out Quality Automart outside of Batesville, Indiana, on Route 46.
Good deal. Yeah, Merle. When you had sent this over, this idea of doing this show, this is something we did a big show on this. Kind of you interviewing me on just the struggles that I've had in my life with porn, and it's been a part of my life. I venture to say a lot of men, it's been a part of their life. So it is a topic that needs to be brought up. It needs to be discussed. And I like this idea of trying to, again, because there's whole accountability set up on the idea of porn, whether it be you're giving someone your password to be able to see what you're viewing on your computer, your phone. There's accountability set up in that sense. But I like the idea of trying to approach this a little bit different. This idea of let's begin to hate something. And so hopefully, if you guys are tuning in with us and hanging in there, hopefully we'll get some good takeaways from this show. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit just prior to hitting the record button about, the challenge, like if you're going to war with someone, it's really difficult to get it in your heart to go to war or even a fight with somebody if it's not in your heart to, again, I'm going to use this word loosely, but to hate that very core of that person, right? Or to hate what they're about. And so you can't sit there and you can't be on both sides of the fence. Like if you're going to go into that level of battle, no different than love. Like if you're going to love, you got to be all in or all out. And so the same thing here with hate. Like if you really want to reject something, you can't say, well, I kind of like this situation, but not all of it. If you're going to fight it, if you're going to go to war with it, you've got to absolutely reject it. Okay. And again, on human scales of world wars, these are really sad situations. You hate entire populations and all these kinds of things. But you have to get that in your head just so that you can actually have the heart for the war. Okay. And so here are some things we want to talk about. Like, how do you start to actually get hate in your heart for these types of sins? And this is a bit of how it's been done the opposite way. So we have to learn how we got love in our heart, and I'm using the word very loosely, how we got love in our heart for these sins. So we better understand how, then what would that look like going the other direction? And so this is some of the stuff of how we've gotten love in our heart for like the porn industry. It starts really with just very very interesting, fun, exciting entertainment,
Mhm.
right? Typically beautiful women, dressed with just a little bit of flesh,
Mhm.
right? And that's intriguing, and I can let my mind go do the rest,
Yep.
right? And so that was very common even in the early 1900s, when you first started to get some pictures, photos, and then even movies where you started to see a little bit more revealing.
Mhm.
And it was just enough that it could be done in a classy way that people would be like, yeah, kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's a very soft entry into that's not so bad.
Yep.
Okay. But then we have to always up the bar.
Mhm.
We have to up the bar because right now, yeah, well, I've seen chicks in a bikini before.
Yeah.
What's the big deal? And so we have to up the ante. And so as we up the ante, we become more revealing.
Mhm.
We become more engaging. We really have to take away some of the imagination and actually just let the eye see it.
Yeah.
Okay, and so. Just to give you some stats now, there's 28.5 billion annual visits to Pornhub, which is one of the major porn sites. Okay, so look at that, 28.5 billion visits to that. That was in 2017. 81 million daily go to the Pornhub site. Okay, 50,000 searches per minute. That's a bunch,
Yeah.
right? Let's see, 68 years. This was in 2017. There's 68 years worth of content uploaded onto the Pornhub site. 68 years worth. So that thing is being uploaded constantly with new stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, as you're talking again, this show is all about hating the porn industry. But I think when we take a step back and this idea of hating our sin, I think it's addiction, right? There's an addiction associated with pornography in the porn industry. And man, if you look at other addictions similar to a drug addiction, just like you were saying, it starts off kind of just you see the flesh, right? A little bit of skin, right? And then that progresses into, and we'll get into talking about some of the actual, it gets into the hardcore pornography, right? And man, when you look at drugs, I think they always say the gateway drug is pot, right? Everyone starts off like, oh, it's just pot, right? Well, then it turns into what the next thing, and then it's like crack, and then it's and then it gets to the hardcore drugs that we're seeing now of like the fentanyl and the morphine and the heroin, and I think the same is exactly the same when it comes to this pornography. And just I think this is a lot of where the fleshly desires and our minds begin to Satan really grabs a hold of this because he knows for sure when it comes to men, because we're going to talk about how this is a man industry, right? This is a man problem that that we have created and that we are perpetuating this problem. And it's like Satan grabs a hold of that and he'll sprinkle in these small little images, very, very, maybe quote unquote innocent, right? And then we take that and then those numbers of what Pornhub is, today is crazy. But again, if we begin to learn that we need to hate the porn industry, we have to know stats and we have to know things about the porn industry, because we in our minds sometimes we have to justify why is porn so bad. Well, look at some of the things that the porn industry is doing. In order for us, we have to take a step back. Okay, we should hate that.
Yeah. Well, you've got the perfect storm here because you've got, on the old teeter-totter, you have to have two forces. Okay. And so you have the dopamine desire on the one side, and those are all of the people who are actually checking out the sites, who are partaking in it. But then there's another big dopamine driver, and that's the monetization, the money behind it. And so this is crazy because now if you can find a way to make money off of somebody searching for a dopamine hit, you can get a dopamine hit of all the cash you're going to be making. And so this is a perfect cyclic storm that feeds itself. I mean, the industry, the porn industry will worldwide is going to take in over $100 billion this year. Okay. The U.S. porn industry alone is going to be around 13 billion. So I think it's important that we talk about it. This is worldwide. This is not just a U.S. problem.
Yes.
Okay. And just to give you an idea, In the United States, the NFL generated 17.19 billion in 2021, and Netflix generated 29.7 billion in 2021. Okay, and so again, that's nationwide, right? Of what Netflix and I'm sorry, not nationwide, worldwide. Okay,
Yeah.
so just to give you an idea of how big this is in terms of a moneymaker, right?
Yep.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, when we look at those numbers, because I mean, look how massive something like the NFL is,
Mm-hmm.
and how appealing that is for men, right?
Right.
I mean, the vast majority, I would, maybe a general statement there, but a lot of men are the ones that are viewing the NFL and are contributing to the massive profits that the NFL are making. Then you look at the numbers. I mean, the $100 billion worldwide, globally, $100 billion. To me, again, just what you were saying. Yes, there are the part of it, the viewing, but also the people that are producing these said porn sites, the amount of money that they are making, right? And again, this is, I mean, I think at its core, sure, there is a money problem here, right? But it is just what you're talking about, the dopamine hits that men predominantly are getting off of these hits that we, again, need to learn to hate.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be a need, right?
Yep.
Somebody has a need for this, a desire for it. And so once somebody realizes, oh, there's a need for this, then the industry side says, well, how do I fulfill that need? How do I create that? And so here's part of the problem is that, as you said before, this is primarily a man-driven problem, but it comes on the backs of women and children primarily.
Yeah.
And so, we've talked before about big companies, how they might exploit whether it's Nike or Adidas or somebody, and they create clothing, and you find out that they're doing it in some sweatshop over in India somewhere, and they're paying people $2 a day.
Yep.
And everybody's outraged by that. Like, oh my gosh, boycott Nike. And again, like, listen, if it's nasty, if it's at the expense of those people, but this is not always at the expense of people. If $2 a day in that India village is big money, then these people are like, no, don't take this industry away from us, because they are wantingly desiring that, and it's a win-win. Okay, so that's not a bad thing. Just because those people make a lot less money per day than what the U.S. standard is, it doesn't mean that they're doing bad by their standards.
Yeah.
So they're upping their place in life. Where it gets bad is when you are basically putting people in against their will. And that's where we're actually seeing the darkness of the porn industry. The history now is very full blown in how the women are exploited. And there is a crazy series out there right now that is basically talking about the dark side of hardcore porn. And there's a YouTube series, it's Beyond Fantasy Hardcore, and it talks about this industry, like behind the scenes, how they bring these women in. And I just for a second want to address, as you strong dads out there listening, just put your daughter in this place, okay? Because, right, I'm trying to get you to understand the level of righteous hate that we should have.
Yeah.
And the way to bring that home is to see what would it be like if it were actually happening in your life to one of your kids. You have 2 daughters, right?
Yep.
And so if you imagined that they got into this dark, dark world, I think it would incite the rage and anger in you as their father.
Right. Well, and I think that should be the I mean, as hard as it is to envision that and to think about that should be the perspective, again, to learn and to try and develop this righteous hate towards a huge sin for predominantly men. That is the mindset we need to have, and as you're talking, just reading some of the notes from that series that you were talking about, this idea that these producers are basically, again, it talks about how it is consenting adults, right? That is a big thing when it comes to porn industry. Initially, right, exactly. And they come in and they wait, they give them very little details about what's going to what performance is going to be done, and then they sign on the dotted line giving that consent, and then all of a sudden all the ins and outs, the hardcore details are coming out about this. And it's just like, again, if we are strong dads, we're supposed to be standing up for women and kids and our family. Like, this should be something that we want to hate, we want to fight against, because of the abuse that these women are taking.
Yeah. Well, we've all at times felt stuck in jobs. So, like, if I'm in a job and I'm like, I'm not particularly happy with this job, but right now I'm making so much money, or I'm making it well enough that I'm just not going to easily just walk in today and quit. Because it's going to be hard for me to replace my standard. So that is the basic premise of how most of these girls are lured in. These are girls who oftentimes come from total brokenness, poverty, drugs, and they just don't know where the next day is going to come from. And so early on, these typically gentlemen, all right, I'll rephrase that. Typically jerks of men,
right,
instead of gentlemen, will come in and swoo them into, hey, I'll pay you this much. Here's some promises of these luxuries. Usually there are drugs and alcohol involved. One particular article that they listed out, they're on the filming site, the drugs that were right there on a table that were available, they were free. They were cocaine, alcohol, pot, and so they were free. You come in, and this was actually part of the foreplay. Right? To even get people warmed up to do these things, that they would have this little session beforehand where they would try to make it as light and airy as possible, of everybody kind of getting high or drunk. And once the defenses are dropped down, then we start doing some of the recording. And this was standard procedure. And so for the young girls who were just starting off, I was like, well, sure, this isn't so bad. Well, once things get rolling, as you talked about before, they are then introduced to new ideas that they're going to do, okay? New scenes that are going to be shot. And they're said, well, you're not going to get paid unless we do this. And they throw in, here's a new person that they're going to bring into it. And the thing grows in terms of the monster that it becomes. But we've now got the girl trapped because she's making great money. She possibly has a drug addiction now, and she's going to be able to get these drugs free. And so the whole thing is just as dark and ugly as can be, while I've got some jerk of a man typically back in the other room smoking his big cigar and counting his greenies. And that is the darkness right there that we're saying, you got to hate on this stuff. You've got to hate this stuff.
Yep. And again, not to get to too much of the details. Obviously, you guys can, kind of do a little bit of research on their own. But I think it's important, in this article and in the series, it talks about, this idea that women are actually being physically harmed through the porn industry, and actually having to get surgeries to fix some of the things that have been done to them. And man, that should be something that we are standing firm on, hating that, and having a hatred for that because of the abuse that our women are taking. Because I can't imagine there's a man in the world, for sure, anybody that's tuning into this, that if they were to see a woman being physically abused on the side of a street, they wouldn't stop it and help out, right? But then again, it's just like we collectively as men, we're contributing to this abuse of women, and sometimes significant abuse of women, where there is a physical harm being done, where there has to be actually surgery, going in later and fixing.
People are permanently damaged. Even if they're not physically permanently damaged, there is permanent damage through PTSD, right? Mental, psychological abuse, spiritual abuse, even to the point of suicide and death that can come from these. So, okay, so we've tried to paint a pretty dark picture for a very honest reason, okay, that this is a sin that we want to learn to hate, and it is great to hate this sin. I am not talking about hating the people, all right? Now, if they identify and they're like, no, totally, this is what I do, this is who I am,
Yeah.
then you're going to find it's going to be hard to separate that
Yes.
sin from that person. And, we are still going after the sin here, not the person. Okay. And so here's our deal as strong dads. All right. So what can I do? We want to be proactive. We want to bring our kids into knowing I want my girls to know how to defend, and I want my boys to know how not to perpetrate. Okay. I mean, again, we're not saying that a boy couldn't be a victim of this. No, early on they are.
Sure.
Okay. But then they can start to be part of the evil picture. Okay.
Yep.
I want to start by the education part that we start in our own home. First off, as a dad, you better role model as well as you can. None of us are going to be perfect, but you better role model what it is to take care of people, but primarily the females, your wife, your daughters, what it looks like to take care of them. Okay. And this is not just providing food and water. Okay.
Yeah.
This is to take care of them on a level that they need to be taken care of. And we all need to work on it. I'm very guilty myself. I sometimes don't see what our girls in our house need to have, and I dismiss it.
Yep.
And it comes back to bite me.
Yep. Yeah, Merle, this is almost a daily thing that I want to do, and I strive to do, and that's pray for my girls. And one of my biggest prayers that I have for my girls is that God would protect my girls' hearts. And I've mentioned before on this show, but I just feel so strongly about that is something that I need God's assistance in. Something that I can do that I feel God has called me to do is help protect my girls' reputation. And it is a goal of mine to continually pray that God would allow me to help me protect my girl's reputation, and he would protect my girl's heart, because those are two things that, man, as we talk about this hatred towards the porn industry, again, not always, but there are a lot of cases where these women come from quote unquote daddy problems, right?
Yep.
There's daddy problems, which again, a lot of the sins, a lot of things going on in our society can probably be reverted back to daddy problems, which is part of the reason why we started Strong Dads, right?
Right.
And so I just think, man, part as we start into this, what role can strong dads play? I think the role is be a strong dad, be active, be a part of it, have these conversations, just like you were saying, model what that relationship with your spouse looks like, because that is going to be the relationship that our girls are going to look towards. That is a relationship that our young boys are going to be looking towards. How is daddy treating mommy?
Yeah, at a very young age. This is why the dinner table is so important. This is where most parenting, good parenting, can take place. It's not the only place, but it is a primary place. And at a very young age, and I'm talking here 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, you're talking already to your kids at the dinner table about the sexual righteousness and unrighteousness that they're seeing out in their culture. And so age appropriately, you're already speaking. If a boy ever says this to you, this is not for you to be accepted. This is for you to be rejected. I'm looking at my boys saying, you don't ever talk to a girl that way.
Yep.
Okay. So these are things that at a young age you're teaching. And, by the time they're 15 and 16 years old, you're having conversations like, if a guy ever pushes you into a place that you're uncomfortable sexually, you have full permission to say no. And if he doesn't respond to that positively, then you need to know you're leaving there. Okay. Yeah. And giving them that full permission, no matter what that knucklehead guy is pushing. All right. You also have to really, this is like 90% of all of these encounters where girls feel abused come with alcohol and drugs, but primarily alcohol being involved. You have to think about that.
Yeah.
Right? The inhibition that is dropped. So I could have my daughter who's 16 years old, and she's going to a party and everybody's having a blast and they're drinking and, a little kissing. And the next thing you know, both of them are going way farther. And the inhibition, alcohol is the one drug that drops inhibition like more than any other drug.
Yeah.
And so understanding and teaching your kids, well, you need to know, teenage pregnancies almost always have alcohol involved. Almost always.
Yep. Well, Merle, as you're talking, one of the things that I was thinking, that when we talk about having a righteous hatred for the porn industry, that hatred can't be because of your kids. It can't be for your kids. You can't hate porn for your kids. You have to hate porn for yourself. And I think that is because again, you can put your kids in those shoes of girls that are getting involved in the porn industry and hate that mindset, hate that where your mind goes with that. But you also have to hate it for yourself. It has to be something that you realize, this sin in my life, this hatred has to be present, because I can't try and help my kids walk through the gory details of pornography in that industry if I don't realize that and understand that myself.
Right.
And we did the show on the pornography in my life and what it looked like, and for me, what a lot of it was the way in which I talked about pornography in my life, that it just happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
That it was something that just, I fell into this again, right? It happened to me. Taking the stance of nothing happens to you on accident. This is something, an attention that you're doing. So man, I just think if this is a struggle for you, it's going to be very, very difficult to teach our kids how to fight against this and have a hatred for pornography if you yourself are struggling with this and you yourself are not having that same hatred. It has to be something again, it's very hard to, not to say it's impossible, but it's very hard to put out your neighbor's house that's on fire while your house is on fire. Yep. So this has to be something that you need to take care of yourself first and bring your spouse along with this. This is something that I failed to do as I struggled through the pornography. It's something I didn't really bring Jenny along for the ride, and it should have been something that she came along. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a process that I've gone through. I feel very strong where I'm at now. It's been multiple years since I have viewed pornography. Mm-hmm. But this is something that I failed not bringing Jenny up to speed on what I was dealing with. Because again, as we talked about in that show before, pornography and the viewing of pornography is essentially, it's not essentially, it is committing adultery against your spouse. Mm-hmm. And again, that's where that hatred needs to come in. We need to have that righteous hatred for cheating against our spouse.
Yeah, yeah. And we have to also let our spouses even know. So I can't tell you, Kyle, how often that I have had women come in and they now have completely rejected that their husband watches porn. But early on, they almost gave it an acknowledgement of a head nod of like, well, he does it. Yeah, because we as men have worked really hard to try to desensitize our women to say that it's okay. So even in their core, they're like, something doesn't feel right about this. But he has constantly said, well, it's not that big of a deal, and it can help both of us in the bedroom and blah, 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 blah. And so she has to be very aware how she has become desensitized, just like us men have become desensitized from the marketplace. So yeah, you do want to bring her along, but you have to take the lead on it, right?
Yes, 100%.
In Deuteronomy 6, there are some instructions here that are given about just how we want to really infiltrate our house with what is right, okay? And if you don't understand why you need to infiltrate your house, in other words, fill it up, you need to understand how your house is going to be naturally filled with stuff, okay? You naturally acquire whatever can seep in, all right? And so if you don't take a stand against it, your house will be filled with the crap that is out there. So Deuteronomy 6 starts at 4. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them as on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." Guys, like in other words, we've heard the scripture, rejoice always, pray without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. In other words, this is always, as a strong dad, it's always present in my mind. What kind of garbage is coming in my house? What kind of garbage is coming in my house? Through the phones, through the TV, through the computers, through the mail. Like, what's coming into my house? I need to start to put the right stuff in my house.
Merle, one thing I think we can do today as a strong dad, and maybe you've never done this before, and it's been a while since I've done this, so I'm calling myself on this. Invite God into your house, because you may have been told or been taught that God is everywhere, right? but I think God wants us to invite him into our house. He wants us to ask him to come and infiltrate our house, come through the phones, come through our tablets, everything that's going on in our house. He wants to be invited into that. I truly do believe God just wants you to ask him to come in and be a part of your family, be a part of your relationships. So, man, what a great place to, this upcoming week to just do that. Just ask God to invite him into that. Ask God, invite him into the sticky, the nasty situations of pornography. If it's something you're struggling with, just invite him into that. He already knows what's going on. He already knows. Right. But man, I truly do believe God just wants to be asked and invited into those situations.
Yeah, you're right. You do have to invite him in. You say, well, why doesn't he just come in if he knows this is bad? God's the creator of freedom. He's the creator of freedom. And so he gives us that freedom to choose. Yep. And so we either choose to invite him in or we choose to invite other stuff in.
Yeah, because he says he stands at the door and knocks, right? He's standing at the door of your house and he is knocking, and he'll continue to knock, right? But you have to open the door and you have to actually say, come on in.
That's the freedom part. You get the choice. Yep. And so if we are choosing stuff that is destroying our girls, our boys, and we as strong men are not standing up and recognizing and even contributing to this garbage, then this is on us. And I think we're already paying a huge price for lots of these things, whether it's in the drug world, whether it's in the porn world. The criminal world itself is something that men have a lot more say in than they recognize. They also have a lot more play in it too. And I think a lot of that is due to just young men not being fathered well to stand up to these things. So, all right. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully the idea that you understand how to really deal with porn from a hate perspective. Yeah. And it is okay to hate on this sin, and to hate on it, you have to be educated about it. You have to educate yourself about the enemy so that it repulses you enough to generate that spirit of hate. Remember, Christ was in the temple and he saw all of the basic evilness that was going on with the money exchanging and abusing God's house, and he basically goes crazy, and he starts flipping tables. And so he allowed that to generate in him so he could really make a stand against it. And this is the type of stand we have to make against it.
Yep. I think this is just scratches the surface when it comes to this, but hopefully it just kind of gets the idea of the hatred and the righteous hatred that we should be having for pornography in the porn industry. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys got something out of it. For sure, reach out to us if you have more questions. You want to kind of dive into this topic more. I know that Merle would love to come alongside you and using biblical principles to walk through the difficulty that is the porn industry, because there's no two ways about it. It is a tough thing to conquer, but man, it is doable. It is doable if you have accountability to come alongside of you. If you're bringing your spouse, it is doable. Trust me, it is doable. I'm not the end all be all, but it is something that I truly do feel that I've conquered in my life.
That's awesome for you and your wife and your girls. Yep. All right. So we want to thank all you listeners out there and followers. Please do us a favor, give us a 5-star rating. Pass this show on. If you know somebody who's struggling, please pass it on, share it to other people. Also want to thank our sponsors again. We want to thank Quality Auto Mart and Casey's Outdoor Solutions. So thank those guys for us if you're doing any business their way. So sign us out, dude, and let's roll.
Good deal. Go out there and be some strong dads.
Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.